My hands are still shaking. NGL. I never thought I'd be posting this kind of story, but everything just shattered. I'm Emily, 24, and for as long as I can remember, my parents, Frank and Brenda, had this rock-solid thing, 30 years strong. Or so I thought. This afternoon, I walked into a silence that screamed louder than any fight and found my entire world upside down. I'm still trying to piece it together, TBH. My dad, Frank, he's one of those guys who just grinds, always exhausted, always providing. He probably got home yesterday around 6:30 p.m., just wanting to kick off his shoes and unwind. What he walked into, though, wasn't the usual evening. Mom, Brenda, she must have been waiting. Not with a warm dinner or a hug, but with a glass of wine, sitting there probably with that fake, sweet, determined expression she gets when she's about to drop a bomb. God, I can just picture it now. My stomach is churning just thinking about it. She probably didn't even let him sit down before she hit him with it. Frank, she would have said, maybe even with a sigh, like he was the problem. I'm leaving you. I found my soulmate. Soulmate. The word itself makes me want to scream. 30 years of marriage, 2 kids, a whole life built together, just gone. For a soulmate. NGL. The sheer audacity, the coldness of it all, it's beyond anything I can comprehend. My dad, he's not exactly the expressive type, but I know him. He must have just frozen. His mind, it probably just shut down, couldn't compute what she was saying, like a computer crashing. And then she probably just pushed the papers across the table. Divorce papers, already filled out, I bet, demanding his signature right then and there, like it was some business transaction, not the end of a lifetime. The outline said his world went dim, his body unresponsive. I can see it. I can feel it. He probably felt a physical slap, even if she didn't touch him. The shock of it all, the betrayal, it's too much. When I got home later, the house was eerily quiet. Too quiet. Dad's car was in the driveway, which meant he was home, but Mom's wasn't. That was the first red flag, though at the time, IDK, I just thought maybe she went to the store or something. I walked in, calling out, Dad, Mom? Nothing, just that silence, thick and heavy. I found him at the kitchen table. My dad, Frank. He was just sitting there, motionless. His eyes were open, but they were glazed over like he was looking right through me, not seeing anything. There was a little bit of drool at the corner of his mouth. My heart stopped, just stopped beating. He looked like a shell, like someone had scooped out everything inside him and left just the frame. Then I was them, stacked neatly next to his unresponsive hand. The papers, the top one, bold letters, screaming at me, petition for divorce. That's when it hit me. All of it. The quiet house, Mom gone, Dad like this. Suddenly, the initial worry I had for him, for her leaving, it evaporated. It wasn't just sadness anymore. It was cold, white-hot anger. How dare she? How could she do this to him? To us? I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking so bad I almost dropped it. Dialed 911. My father, he's unresponsive. I don't know what happened. He's just not moving. My voice was trembling, barely a whisper. I knelt beside him, taking his hand. It was cold, so cold. Dad? I whispered, but he didn't stir. Panic was a raw knot in my chest. What was happening? What did she do? The paramedics arrived fast, sirens wailing, breaking the deathly quiet. I directed them, my words still shaky. They worked quickly, efficiently, strapped him onto a stretcher, hooked him up to things. Seeing him wheeled out of our house, limp and pale, felt like a nightmare. They took him to St. Jude's. I promised I'd be right behind them. After they left, I locked the front door, the click echoing in the empty house. My head was spinning. I called my Aunt Carol first, then Grandma, trying to keep my voice steady, trying to explain without breaking down. Then Dad's work. Told them he had a medical emergency. Each call felt like another brick falling from the wall around my life. And then, the last call, the one I dreaded. Brenda, my mom. I pulled up her number, staring at it. My fingers hovered. Every fiber of my being wanted to smash the phone, to never speak to her again. But I had to. She had to know what she'd done. Taking a deep, ragged breath, fueled by a rage so intense it made my head throb, I pressed call. I hit call on Brenda's number, my heart pounding in my ears. I half expected her to not pick up or for it to go straight to voicemail. But she did. Her voice, annoyingly casual, almost cheerful, hit me like a slap. "Hey, sweetie, what's up? Is everything okay?" Like she hadn't just torched our entire lives. My blood ran cold, then boiled. "Okay?" I practically screamed, my voice cracking. "Okay, Mom? Dad's in an ambulance right now, on his way to the hospital, because you left him unconscious with divorce papers on the table." The words tumbled out, raw and unfiltered. There was a pause, a beat of silence that felt like forever. Then she tried to play dumb. "What are you talking about, Emily? Your father was fine when I left. We had a discussion. He looked a little pale, maybe, but he was completely coherent. I told him I was leaving. I told him about Paul. Paul, my mind raced. Paul? Who the hell was Paul? My dad's condition, her casual mention of some random guy, it twisted my gut. "Paul?" I repeated, my voice dripping with venom. "You left him for a Paul and you think he was fine. He was unresponsive, Mom. He could have had a stroke. You just abandoned him." "Don't you dare accuse me, Emily," she snapped, her casual tone completely gone now, replaced by an ugly defensiveness. "I had every right to leave. Frank and we haven't been happy in years. I deserve happiness. Paul makes me happy. Paul understands me." Happiness. God, the selfishness of it. So abandoning your husband of 30 years, leaving him to potentially die on the kitchen floor. That's happiness? I choked out, tears of rage blurring my vision. "You're heartless, Mom. Absolutely heartless. And who the hell is Paul?" She sighed, a dramatic put-upon sound. "Look, this isn't about Paul, okay? This is about me finally getting what I deserve. My rightful share of everything. And I'm going to marry Kevin." And just like that, it clicked. Kevin. Not Paul. Kevin. Kevin from her work, the younger guy she'd always laughed with, the one she'd started working late with a lot more often over the past 6 months. "Kevin?" I breathed, the realization a punch to the gut. "It's Kevin, isn't it? Not Paul. You just lied. Kevin, your coworker. You've been having an affair with Kevin." Another pause. This one shorter, more defiant. "It's none of your business, Emily. And yes, it's Kevin. We're in love. And I already told you I'm getting my share and we're getting married." She didn't even deny it, just threw it in my face. The affair, the cold, hard truth of it. "Dad is in St. Jude's," I said, my voice dangerously calm, the rage a steady burn now. "They think he might have had a stroke, all because you decided to spring your soulmate and divorce papers on him like some kind of cruel joke. And NGL, you've been screwing Kevin for months, haven't you? At least 6 months, right? Is that why you kept saying Paul to throw me off? You're disgusting." "Emily, watch your tone," she hissed. "And I'm not coming to the hospital. Kevin and I are busy. Don't wait up for me." "Good," I spat. "Don't bother. No one wants you here. Stay with your soulmate. I hope you both rot." And without waiting for another word, I hit the end call button, my thumb shaking. It felt good. A small, fleeting moment of satisfaction amidst the chaos. Almost immediately, my phone started ringing again. Her number. Then again, and again, I could see her name flash on my dad's phone too, which I had grabbed before leaving the house. I ignored them all. Let her stew. I finally pulled into the hospital parking lot, my mind a mess. Inside, the emergency waiting room was a blur. I found the desk, explained I was Frank Miller's daughter. They told me he was stable, in observation, and that his sister Carol was already with him. Carol, Aunt Carol, a force of nature, and a lawyer, thank God. I walked into his room. Dad was hooked up to monitors, pale but awake, looking utterly lost. Aunt Carol was there, already on her phone, looking furious. She saw me, and her face softened a fraction, then hardened again. "Brenda's been calling me too, the absolute nerve," she growled, ending the call. I just stood there for a second, then went over to Dad, giving him a gentle hug. He just squeezed my hand weakly. Then I turned to Carol, the divorce papers clutched in my hand. Aunt Carol, I started, my voice still raw. It's worse than you think. Brenda just dropped these on him, and she told me she's leaving him for Kevin, her coworker. She's been having an affair for months. I pushed the papers into her hands. Carol's eyes widened, then narrowed into slits of pure fury as she took the documents. An affair? For months? That explains a lot, she muttered, already scanning the papers. This is low, even for Brenda. And this lawyer she's got? A shyster? Plain and simple. Trying to pull a fast one. She looked up at me, a fierce determination in her gaze. Don't worry, Emily. We're not letting her get away with this. Not a chance. Aunt Carol, with those papers in her hand, was like a pit bull. She just scanned them, her lips pressed into a thin line. This isn't just some spur-of-the-moment thing, Emily, she said, her voice low and dangerous. This divorce process has been active for over 2 months. Look at these filing dates. And Brenda's lawyer, NGL, they're not cheap. This means she's been planning this, saving up, probably funneling money for a while now. My stomach dropped further. 2 months? More. While Dad was just going about his life, thinking everything was normal, she was orchestrating this whole thing. The shyster part clicked then. So she waited until she could afford this expensive lawyer, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Carol nodded, her eyes flashing. Exactly. But don't you worry, that shyster won't know what hit them. I know every trick in the book, and then Brenda's made a huge mistake underestimating us. A little later, the doctor came in to give us an update on Dad. He said it wasn't a stroke, thank God. My shoulders, which I didn't even realize were so tense, finally slumped with relief. But then he said it was an anxiety-induced stress attack. Basically, Dad's body just freaked out from the shock. It was serious, he stressed, and could have led to worse. The relief I felt was instantly replaced by a fresh surge of white-hot rage against Brenda. She literally almost killed him. Carol, ever the pragmatist, was already on the phone, a whirlwind of legal action. She was securing Dad's assets, freezing accounts, making sure Brenda couldn't touch another dime. We need to protect everything, she explained to me, her phone pressed to her ear. Brenda's obviously trying to grab what she can and run. We need to beat her to it. Then she looked at me, a serious expression on her face. Emily, I need you to go back to the house, right now. You need to gather all of Frank's important personal belongings. Any documents, valuables, anything sentimental. Your stuff too. Don't leave anything behind that she could take or trash. So that's what we did. Carol drove us back to the house, the silence in the car heavy, punctuated only by her hushed phone calls to her legal team. The house felt different now. Violating, like Brenda's betrayal had seeped into the very walls. We went straight to Dad's study first. Carol knew exactly what to look for. We pulled out his will, insurance policies, financial statements, old photo albums, anything irreplaceable, anything that mattered. I carefully packed them into a box, my hands still shaking slightly. Then I went to my own room, grabbing my laptop, some favorite books, clothes, anything that truly felt like mine. And then hesitantly, I went into Brenda's room. It felt alien, like I was trespassing. I was looking for anything else of days or things that might have sentimental value to the family. My eyes scanned her dresser. That's when I noticed it, or rather noticed its absence. Her custom-made jewelry box. Dad had had it specially made for her years ago for their 20th anniversary. It was this beautiful mahogany box, intricately carved. Over the years, he'd filled it with various pieces of expensive jewelry, necklaces, earrings, bracelets, all gifts from him. And now it was gone. A cold dread started to creep up my spine. My gaze drifted to her closet. Usually it was packed with designer clothes, shoes, bags. Brenda loved her luxury items. But now it was sparse. Large gaps on the hanging racks, empty shelves where expensive handbags used to sit. Her favorite Louboutin heels, those expensive Chanel bags she always toted, the silk dresses, all gone. Not just a few things, a significant portion. I walked out to Carol, who was finishing up a call. Aunt Carol, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Her jewelry box is gone, and a lot of her expensive clothes and bags. I think she cleared out her valuables. Carol's lips tightened. Of course she did. She's been planning this meticulously. That's why we need to act fast. We're getting the locks changed on this house tomorrow. First thing, and I'm arranging for security cameras. We don't want her coming back to claim anything else, or worse, try to destroy evidence. She looked around the house, a grim expression on her face. Frank will stay with me when he's discharged. He needs a safe place, away from all of this. As we left the house, the sun setting, casting long, eerie shadows. The feeling of dread only intensified. This wasn't just a divorce. This was a calculated, cold-blooded ambush. Brenda wasn't just leaving. She was gutting us, leaving nothing but emotional wreckage in her wake. The depth of her betrayal felt like an endless pit opening up beneath our feet. Dad was discharged a couple of days later. He was still frail, confused, and just empty. Moving him into Aunt Carol's was quiet and somber. He barely spoke, just sat there, staring into space. It broke my heart to see him like that. I stayed with him, trying to bring him back, talking gently, reminding him he wasn't alone. Slowly, painstakingly, he started to talk. Fragmented memories, like shards of glass. She said she found her soulmate, he'd whisper, his eyes wide with disbelief. And the papers, she just threw them at me. Then the worst part, she slapped me, Emily. When I didn't sign, she slapped me so hard. My blood ran cold hearing that. He remembered the physical abuse, the sheer depravity of it. Then, almost as an afterthought, he murmured, she was wearing Mom's earrings, the antique ones. I remember thinking how strange it was. She usually only wore them for special occasions. My grandmother's antique diamond earrings, a family heirloom, passed down for generations. Irreplaceable. My gut twisted. Brenda had taken them. She hadn't just left. She'd plundered. My anger, which had started to simmer down into a dull ache, flared back up into a roaring fire. Meanwhile, Aunt Carol was a force of nature. She immediately initiated the discovery process, legal jargon for demanding every single financial record from Brenda, bank statements, credit card statements, investment portfolios, everything. We need to see every penny that moved, Emily, Carol explained, her jaw tight, especially anything that's gone missing. That's when my own inner detective kicked into overdrive. I remembered Dad's meticulous filing system, even for gifts. I started digging through old bonds, through his office files, looking for anything related to jewelry. Hours blurred into one another, fueled by coffee and pure indignation. And then I found them. A stack of receipts from high-end jewelers. Years of them. Frank, Dad, he'd bought Brenda so many beautiful, expensive pieces. Custom design necklaces, anniversary rings, diamond bracelets. He truly loved her, and he showed it. Each receipt was a stab to my heart, knowing how she'd repaid his generosity. I brought the stack to Carol. She looked at them, a grim expression on her face. This is good, Emily. Very good. We can use this. We'll contact these jewelers. So we did. Carol, with her legal weight, made calls. I listened in, my heart pounding. One jeweler confirmed multiple purchases. Another remembered Dad's detailed requests for custom designs. But it was the third call that really hit hard. Yes, the voice on the other end confirmed, after some searching. Mrs. Miller, Brenda Miller, did bring in several pieces to sell within the last 2 months. Some custom designs, yes, and yes, she did sell a pair of antique diamond earrings. Very unique, very old cut. She said they were inherited. My breath hitched. The earrings, she sold them. My grandmother's earrings. It wasn't just a divorce. This wasn't just about her finding happiness. This was a systematic, calculated stripping of my father's assets in our family's history. It was pure, unadulterated theft. The rage that consumed me was so intense I felt lightheaded. She wasn't just cheating, she was robbing him blind. I want to confront her. I seethed, my hands clenched into fists. I wanted to call her and scream at her. Carol shook her head, her expression resolute. No, Emily, not yet. We don't give her the satisfaction. We don't tip our hand. We build an ironclad case. We use this information in court. She's given us exactly what we need. Despite Carol's advice, I felt a desperate need to know more, to see what else Brenda was up to. I started monitoring her social media, which I rarely looked at before. And there it was. Pictures of Brenda, beaming, looking younger, always with that annoying, smug smile, posing in what looked like a luxury resort in Mexico, another one on a private beach. Captions like, "Living my best life in paradise found with my soulmate," all posted within the last few weeks. My mom, Brenda, was a supervisor at a moderately successful accounting firm. Her salary was decent, but nowhere near enough for a string of luxury vacations like this, especially not on top of expensive lawyers and new living arrangements. This screamed red flag, a huge, flashing, neon red flag. Kevin. It had to be Kevin. He had to be involved in this, somehow, financially. Was he bankrolling her, or were they somehow pooling the stolen assets? The thought sent another wave of sick dread through me. Aunt Carol, ever relentless, didn't stop at the jewelry. She started digging into Brenda and Kevin's workplace, a large accounting firm. She used her connections, making discreet inquiries, looking for any smoke signals of financial irregularities. And she found them. Not just smoke, but a full-blown fire. She uncovered this incredibly complex scheme involving company expenses, fraudulent reimbursements, and manipulated accounts. It looked like Kevin, being younger and probably savvier with the tech, was orchestrating it, diverting company funds into various accounts. And Brenda? She wasn't just aware. It looked like she was an active participant, covering his tracks, authorizing bogus expenses, signing off on things she shouldn't have. They weren't just having an affair. They were partners in crime. My own curiosity was burning. I wanted to know more about Kevin, so I did something a little out there. I found an old address for him online pretending to be Brenda. Using a deeper voice and saying I was his old girlfriend trying to reconnect, and called his previous landlord. NGL, it was awkward, but I confirmed the address, just to see if he was actually living the life he was portraying. Turns out he was moving up fast, but still. Then a pattern emerged. Brenda, always so meticulous, started leaving her work briefcase in her car overnight, parked in the driveway of the house that was still legally ours. At first, I thought it was just carelessness, but then it happened almost every night. Carol, ever the legal eagle, gave me the go-ahead. Under the circumstances, with a pending divorce and suspected fraud, you have a right to access your jointly owned vehicle. If you find anything relevant to the fraud, it's fair game for discovery. So one night, fueled by a mixture of adrenaline and righteous anger, I grabbed the spare car key. My heart was pounding like a drum solo as I unlocked Brenda's car door. The interior still smelled faintly of her expensive perfume, which made my stomach clench. I pulled out the briefcase. It wasn't locked. Inside, neatly organized, were company documents, but not just regular reports. There were encrypted files on a USB drive, and then, tucked deep inside a side pocket, a burner phone. Small, plain, untraceable. My blood ran cold. A burner phone? My suspicions solidified into concrete facts. This wasn't just about an affair anymore. This was serious. This was criminal. I knew with absolute certainty that this phone was for Brenda and Kevin's clandestine communications about their scheme. I took pictures of everything, carefully putting it all back exactly as I found it. The next day I presented my findings to Carol. Her eyes, usually calm and calculating, gleamed with triumph. "This is it, Emily. This is the smoking gun." Carol then made another anonymous tip, not to the police directly yet, but to Brenda and Kevin's company. She supplied enough information, cleverly disguised, to spark an internal investigation. It worked. Within days, we heard whispers through contacts that the company had launched a full-scale audit into their department. The walls were closing in. Dad, meanwhile, was slowly but surely coming back to himself. The initial fog of confusion was lifting, replaced by something much more potent: anger. He remembered the slap, the cruel words. He started talking about getting justice. Not just a divorce, but justice. When Emily and Carol sat him down and presented him with the full picture, the stolen antique earrings, the methodical stripping of his assets, and now the corporate fraud, his face went pale, then red with fury. He was devastated, absolutely shattered by the depth of Brenda's betrayal. But then a new light flickered in his eyes, a spark of defiance. He wasn't just a victim anymore. He was going to fight back. We need more, Dad said, his voice still a little shaky but firm. We need proof of everything. Every lie, every theft. We're on it, Carol assured him. She immediately hired a private investigator, a no-nonsense woman with a reputation for getting results. The PI's job? To document Brenda and Kevin's every move, to capture photos and videos of their lavish lifestyle, the kind that Brenda's salary alone could never afford. We needed hard evidence of their ill-gotten gains. The PI started tailing them. Soon we were getting daily reports, digital files filled with photos. Brenda and Kevin dining at expensive restaurants, driving fancy rental cars, shopping with bags from high-end boutiques. It was a sickening parade of their betrayal, bought with Dad's money and stolen company funds. This wasn't just about a broken marriage. It was a criminal enterprise. Stick around to the end to see how life's costly choices unfold. The PI was relentless, and her reports started coming in fast. The first one was a gut punch. Photos of Brenda and Kevin, all smiles, champagne glasses in hand, lounging on the deck of a ridiculously luxurious yacht. The caption from the PI was simple. Subject Brenda Miller and Kevin on business trip. Business trip, my ass. I immediately recognized the yacht. It wasn't some random boat. It belonged to Northwood Industries, a massive client of Brenda and Kevin's accounting firm. My dad had mentioned them countless times over the years. This wasn't just them having a good time. This was a conflict of interest, an abuse of power, and probably illegal as hell. Further reports from the PI started painting an even uglier picture. More luxury settings, private jets, exclusive resorts, and always Brenda and Kevin meeting with these shady-looking individuals. Not official-looking business types, but slick, almost underworld characters. It became clear this wasn't just a simple affair. It was a deep dive into something much darker. The PI also uncovered irrefutable evidence of them using company credit cards for their personal expenses. Lavish dinners, designer clothing, expensive gifts for each other. Thousands upon thousands of dollars, all charged back to their employer. And then, the biggest bombshell? Kevin had set up a shell company, a fake business specifically designed to funnel illicit transactions and hide their dirty money. This was full-blown corporate fraud and embezzlement. NGL, my jaw dropped. Aunt Carol, with this new intel, made her move. She discreetly contacted the corporate client, Northwood Industries, whose yacht had been used. She didn't reveal everything, just enough to raise a massive red flag about suspicious activities involving their accounting firm's employees. The client naturally freaked out. They launched their own immediate, furious investigation. The fallout was swift and brutal. Within days, Brenda and Kevin were both placed on administrative leave by their employer. Suspended, pending the results of the internal investigation. The news, though not public, spread like wildfire through our family's network. It was the beginning of the end for them. With Brenda and Kevin temporarily sidelined, we intensified our efforts. Emily, Frank, and Carol spent hours, days compiling every single piece of evidence. The stolen jewelry, the fraudulent receipts, the burner phone, the PI reports, the shell company documents. It was a mountain of proof, meticulously organized for both a divorce case and potentially criminal charges. Dad, through all of this, had transformed. The confused, fragile man I found at the kitchen table was gone. In his place was a quiet, steely resolve. The anger hadn't faded, it had hardened into a determination for justice. He wanted Brenda to pay for what she'd done, not just to him, but to our family and to herself. And then she started calling. Brenda. Her number popped up on Frank's phone and mine, begging, crying, "Frank, please, I made a mistake. Kevin was a momentary lapse. I want to come home. I miss you. I miss our life." The audacity was staggering. Love bombing, gaslighting, all rolled into one pathetic package. But Frank was ready. Carol had coached him. He picked up his phone, put it on speaker so Carol and I could hear. His voice was calm, devoid of any emotion. "Brenda," he said, his voice flat, "there's nothing to reconcile. You made your choice. Don't call me again." He hung up, just like that. It was powerful. Her calls intensified after that, to his phone, to mine, to Carol's. Desperate, frantic messages. She was panicking. Her lavish lifestyle was crumbling around her. Her job was gone, and from what we heard, Kevin was already distancing himself, probably looking for a new scapegoat. The rat was abandoning the sinking ship. I made sure Frank blocked her on everything. Phone, email, social media. We cut her off completely. There was no going back. Carol, with a glint in her eye, started finalizing preparations for the divorce hearing. The evidence we had was overwhelming. She looked at us, a small, confident smile playing on her lips. Brenda dug her own grave, she said, and we're just making sure she lies in it. Brenda's lawyer, who had initially tried to be all slick and aggressive, suddenly went quiet, then desperate. They knew about the internal fraud investigation. It was impossible not to. Her shyster lawyer called Carol, trying to settle. They offered Frank a laughably reduced alimony payment, basically trying to get him to sign away his rights and be done with it. Carol just scoffed. I was there when she took the call, sitting beside Dad. Reduced alimony? My client is not interested in accepting anything less than what is legally due to him, given the circumstances of her conduct, Carol said, her voice dripping with implication. She refused to budge. The game was over and Brenda was losing, badly. Then came the official news. Both Kevin and Brenda were fired, terminated immediately from the accounting firm for gross misconduct and extensive fraud. There was no hiding it anymore. Their careers, their reputations, utterly ruined. But it got worse for Brenda. Kevin, the soulmate she'd left Dad for, proved himself to be a true rat. Facing a mountain of criminal charges, he immediately caved. He implicated Brenda in everything. Every fraudulent transaction, every shell company scheme, every misuse of company funds. He spilled his guts, hoping to reduce his own sentence. Classic red flag behavior. But Brenda was too blinded by greed and infatuation to see it. The very next day, I got a call from Carol. Emily, she said, her voice grim. Brenda was arrested this morning. My breath hitched. Arrested for corporate fraud. It was a bizarre, almost surreal moment. A mix of shock, grim satisfaction, and a deep, unexpected sadness. This was my mother, the woman who raised me, and now she was a criminal. News of Brenda's arrest spread like wildfire. A truly juicy scandal in our small community. Her social standing, what little was left after the affair, and the divorce filings was completely annihilated. Everyone knew the pity, the whispers, the judgment. It was all inescapable. Frank, though, seemed to shed a heavy weight. He didn't gloat, but there was a quiet, steely resolve in his eyes, a renewed sense of empowerment. The relief on his face was palpable. He'd been betrayed, almost died, and now justice was finally being served. It wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about consequence. Carol wasted no time. She used the criminal charges as ultimate leverage in the divorce proceedings. Brenda was financially destitute, her job gone, facing jail time, and her remaining assets were frozen by the authorities. She was completely cornered, with nowhere left to run. I actually saw her, briefly, during a procedural court appearance. She looked like a ghost. Her expensive clothes were gone, replaced by a drab outfit. Her hair was messy, her eyes hollow and red-rimmed. She looked utterly broken. She caught my eye for a second, and there was nothing there but despair. I saw her completely collapse, physically and emotionally, sobbing uncontrollably. It wasn't the strong, conniving Brenda anymore. It was just a shell. In NGL, a part of me, the daughter part, still felt a pang of loss for the mother she once was, or at least pretended to be. In the end, Frank agreed to a final divorce settlement. Brenda, with no assets left to fight for and facing a prison sentence, basically signed away everything. He didn't ask for alimony, didn't want a dime from her. He just wanted her out of his life, legally and permanently. As the papers were finalized, I reflected on Brenda's choices. The selfishness, the greed, the utter disregard for anyone but herself. She chased a soulmate and happiness, only to find herself utterly alone, broken, and facing a future behind bars. The damage she caused was irreversible. A family shattered, a husband nearly killed, a daughter heartbroken. All for what? A few months of ill-gotten luxury and a lying soulmate who betrayed her just as she betrayed us. The divorce hearing. It was finally here. Brenda walked in, a shadow of her former self. Her usual confident stride was replaced by a shuffle. Her expensive clothes were gone, and she looked haggard, defeated, her eyes darting nervously around the courtroom. NGL, it was hard to recognize the vibrant, manipulative woman who had torn our lives apart. Aunt Carol, though, was in her element. She was a force of nature, calm and calculated, yet utterly devastating. She systematically laid out the evidence. Each piece was a hammer blow. The timeline of the affair, the stolen jewelry, the detailed PI reports with photos of their lavish, ill-gotten lifestyle, the burner phone, the shell company documents. It was a masterclass in legal takedown. The jeweler, a stern-faced man, testified about Brenda selling Frank's heirloom earrings. He described the uniqueness of the antique diamonds, confirming they were the ones my dad had described. He also confirmed the sale of several other valuable pieces Frank had given her over the years. Each piece presented with a corresponding receipt from Frank and a sale receipt from Brenda. It was brutal. Then came the company investigators. They presented meticulous spreadsheets, transaction logs, and internal audit reports, detailing how Brenda and Kevin had manipulated company expenses and diverted funds. They explained the intricacies of the shell company, the fraudulent reimbursements. The numbers spoke for themselves. It was clear Brenda wasn't just a passive participant. She was an active conspirator. Kevin, through his own attorney, provided a sworn statement. He was trying to save his own skin, but his words were a final, damning indictment of Brenda. He detailed her full involvement, her ideas, her willingness to commit fraud. He threw her under the bus without a second thought, proving just how much of a soulmate he truly was. And then it was my turn. I stood up, my hands trembling slightly, but my voice was firm. I gave my victim impact statement. I spoke about finding my father unconscious, his glazed eyes, the drool, the horror of thinking he had had a stroke. I talked about the emotional trauma, the betrayal, the years of lies. I spoke about the lost mother, the shattered family. My voice cracked a few times, but I finished, looking Brenda dead in the eye, and she couldn't even meet my gaze. She just stared at the floor, shaking. Brenda's lawyer tried to object, tried to poke holes, but it was futile. There was no countering the mountain of evidence. He just stammered, his arguments falling flat, his client looking more defeated with every passing minute. The judge, a no-nonsense woman, didn't mince words. She delivered a scathing rebuke to Brenda. She spoke of her egregious deceit, her financial exploitation of her husband, and the utter cruelty of her actions. It was a public dressing down, a humiliation that Brenda deserved. The final ruling was everything we had hoped for. The court awarded Frank full ownership of the house, significant compensation for all the stolen assets, including the jewelry she'd liquidated. And then, the ultimate slap in the face, the judge granted Frank the divorce, with absolutely no alimony to Brenda. She was left with nothing, not a penny of what she thought was her rightful share. Brenda's reputation, which was already in tatters, was now irrevocably ruined. The entire community, from casual acquaintances to old friends, heard the full extent of her calculated, cruel actions. She was no longer just the woman who had an affair. She was the thief, the fraudster, the heartless betrayer. Frank, sitting beside me, squeezed my hand. A deep sigh escaped him. There was no joy on his face, no triumph, just a profound sense of validation and vindication. The weight had finally lifted. In the days and weeks that followed, I continued to support Frank, helping him navigate the emotional aftermath. It wasn't over just because the gavel fell. The scars ran deep, but we started talking, really talking about everything, about his feelings, about my feelings. We even started therapy, individually and together. The media attention was relentless for a while, turning Brenda's story into a cautionary tale plastered across local news and even some national tabloids. It was surreal. But for us, it was about rebuilding. Slowly, painstakingly, we began to pick up the pieces of our shattered lives, knowing that while the past couldn't be undone, the future was ours to reclaim. Brenda's sentencing hearing was a stark contrast to the divorce proceedings. There was no aggressive lawyer, no desperate pleas. She just stood there, shoulders slumped, as the judge delivered her verdict for corporate fraud. She got a significant prison term. Not life, but enough to ensure she paid a heavy price for her greed and deceit. Seeing her led away in handcuffs, it was a moment of grim finality. NGL, it was hard to process that the woman who had once been my mom was now just inmate number whatever. Kevin, her soulmate, got a lesser sentence, true. His cooperation bought him some leniency, but he still went to prison. No luxury yachts for him anymore. His betrayal of Brenda, ironically, it was the final nail in her coffin. They both got what they deserved, in their own ways. Dad, Frank, he kept going to therapy. It wasn't a quick fix, and he never pretended it was. We talked about the process. He processed the trauma, the betrayal, the anger. He learned to distinguish between what was his fault and what was hers. He was learning to live again, not just survive. It was inspiring, really. As for me, watching Aunt Carol dismantle Brenda in court, seeing her unwavering dedication to justice, it sparked something. I started exploring law as a possible career. I mean, after everything we went through, the injustice, the fight, it felt like a path where I could actually make a difference. Carol even started mentoring me, which was huge. A few months after the dust settled, Frank and I took a trip. Just us. We went to the mountains, a place he always loved. It wasn't about forgetting, but about creating new, good memories. We hiked, we talked, we laughed. It was a symbolic step, a quiet assertion that our lives weren't defined by Brenda's destruction, but by our resilience. It felt like a true start to healing. And then Frank did something that truly showed his character. With a portion of the compensation he received from the court, he made a substantial donation to a domestic abuse charity. But he didn't just donate it, he did it in Brenda's name. It was his own form of moral consequence, a way to take something negative and force it into something positive, almost a spiritual pro-revenge, turning her malice into good. He didn't want to carry her darkness anymore. The house, our home, got a complete overhaul. We renovated it from top to bottom. New paint, new furniture, new energy. We stripped away everything that reminded us of Brenda, making it truly ours again. It felt lighter, cleaner, like a fresh start. After the renovations were done, we hosted a gathering. Not a party, but a quiet celebration with close friends and family. It wasn't about rubbing Brenda's face in it, but about celebrating Frank's resilience, his strength, his ability to come back from the brink. The love and support in that room, it was tangible. It was a reminder that we were not alone. Frank found a new sense of purpose. He picked up old hobbies he'd abandoned, joined a community garden, volunteered at a local shelter. He was engaged with life again, vibrant in a way I hadn't seen in years, even before Brenda's betrayal. It was incredible to witness. My bond with Frank, already strong, solidified into something unbreakable. I became his unwavering support system, and he, mine. We'd face the absolute worst and come out the other side together. That kind of shared experience changes you forever. Years passed, life moved on. I heard, through the grapevine, that Brenda was eventually released from prison, but she was ostracized, alone. Her soulmate had moved on, her reputation destroyed, her family ties severed. She had nothing left. It wasn't something we actively sought out, but it was a quiet reminder of the long-term consequences of her choices. Frank, though healed, never forgot the pain. How could he? But he chose forgiveness. Not for Brenda's sake, but for his own peace. To not let her continue to have power over his emotions. It was a profound lesson in letting go. I recognized the strength we had gained from this ordeal. It taught me about resilience, about fighting for what's right, and about the deep, unbreakable bonds of true family. It was a brutal education, but one that ultimately shaped us. Frank and I moved forward, our lives rebuilt, embodying a quiet strength and a steadfast hope for the future. We had faced the fire, and we had emerged, forever changed, but undeniably stronger. The profound consequences of Brenda's choices echoed through every shattered piece of our lives. Her selfish pursuit of a soulmate led not to happiness, but to utter ruin. She lost her husband of 30 years, her daughter, her career, her freedom, and every shred of her reputation. Her calculated deceit nearly cost Frank his life, plunged our family into chaos, and left a trail of emotional devastation that would take years to heal. The illusion of her perfect life crumbled under the weight of her own greed and infidelity, leaving her isolated and utterly alone. Her story serves as a stark, unforgiving reminder that betrayal, especially when compounded by theft and fraud, carries a price far heavier than any fleeting pleasure or ill-gotten gain. Justice, though hard-won, ultimately prevailed, but the scars of her actions will forever mark the lives she so carelessly destroyed.